Good morning, beautiful people. Hope you all are thriving, not just surviving. This is my second cup of coffee. By the way, do y'all like my little mug? It's probably backwards for you, but it says Peace, Love, Penguins. Isn't it so cute? I just love penguins. Penguins are so cute and so adorable that I could just gobble them up. Anyway, good morning, hello. So today's live show is gonna be a little bit different. Oh, hello. Hello, the effulgent one, Ellie, nice to see ya. Lefty Query, ooh, I love that name. What's up? Akicha, good morning, hello. Hello, everyone. So, per a request from a friend of the live, we are going to do something a little bit different. And I think in general, that's a really good call. We've been covering a lot of the same stuff for the past week, 2 weeks. And I think that we kind of just need a little break. I mean, it will be there when we get back. And it's important to talk about all the chaos and crap happening with the Iran war and how it's impacting America. Though I think since it's Friday, we're gonna do something a little different. Now, truth be told, I was looking for good news and I couldn't find a lot. But today I decided to do something a little bit different where we talked a little bit more about just in general how people in America are feeling about certain topics. And so today we're actually going to be breaking down a lot of different polls. So hold on just a second. Let me get all comfortable. Let me get all in order here. Okay, hold on. Whew. Hello. I love all besties in here, all being besties. So, per a request from a good friend, we're going to be talking about some different things today. And we've been talking a lot about the Iran war. We've been talking a lot about the craziness happening with the United States entering into that war. Whether it's necessary or unnecessary is for you to decide. But we are going to focus on something a little bit different today. Now, per a request from a good friend of the live stream, I was actually looking to share some good news this morning. But when I was researching this morning for today's live stream, trying to break down the information, me and my little journalistic nature being like, I really could not find much like good news out there. So today I decided to do something a little bit different instead. So today we're actually going to be breaking down a lot of polling. One of my favorite pollsters is a group called Data for Progress. And they generally do really awesome work regarding statistical analysis, polling public opinion, and I want to share some of the most interesting polls that I've seen them do recently that haven't really gotten a lot of attention. But this really kind of gives you an understanding into where America is at the moment on certain topics. Yes, we are going to talk about foreign policy again, but we're less talking about the events of it and more about how people are seeing it or how people are viewing it. Oh, watching from the UK? Well, hello. Nice to see you here. Please make sure to send some likes. I love all of you. If you have clicked on this video after it's been posted as a video and not in the live stream, you're awesome. I'm working on posting a lot more content, generally just videos on my page, whether it's shorts or longer videos. And I'll tell you, being a content creator is tough, especially when you're the one doing all of it in-house. So, I appreciate every single one of you. Please make sure to send some likes. I will also be asking for your thoughts in the comments here. So I will probably put up some polling I will put up a quiz. That's not even a quiz, no. I will be putting up, Linda! I can't English this morning. Ooh, long form breakdowns are the best. Yes, I will be putting up some polls here so that you can answer as well. Or maybe I'll just have you answer in the chat. So this is a very interesting poll that I want to cover here. So here we go. Here we go. Good morning, beautiful people. I hope you are thriving and not just surviving. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different per a request from a good friend of the live stream. And this is probably posted as a video. But when someone's already calling me Mrs. Zesty and Mr. Zesty, bless your heart, you little unpolished turd. Minding your own business is free. It's Friday. We don't gotta be nasty right away. Anyway, the trolls got a crush. Regardless, I want to cover some polls today just around public opinion and how people are feeling about certain topics. We're going to, of course, be talking a little bit more about foreign policy, but we're also going to be talking about topics like betting markets, AI, and the Epstein files. So please make sure to send some likes, subscribe if you haven't yet, and let's just get into it. So Data for Progress is a really awesome organization that does statistical analysis, and they measure public opinion on a variety of different topics. And I really like them because they're very accurate, though I also love the way that they will ask questions and do hypothetical scenarios. So let's start with this first one. Voters disapprove of US strikes in Iran, and a plurality of voters think that Israel has too much influence over US foreign policy. So let me break all of this down here. Oh, thank you all for sending likes. I love all of you. So the US-Israel war on Iran, which began on February 28th, has unalived more than 1,200 Iranians and 7 US service members, among others. The Trump administration has offered conflicting accounts of the role Israel has played in the US decision's strike in Iran. Now, in a new survey from Data for Progress, in partnership with the Institute for Middle East Understanding and Demand, Progress, I guess those are all different organizations. Oh, for Middle East Understanding and Demand Progress, they asked US likely voters whether Israel has the right amount of influence on foreign policy, and whether a war with Iran benefits the United States or Israel more, and whether Trump's strikes on Iran have made them more or less likely to vote for a Republican in the upcoming midterm elections. So these were 3 different questions that were asked in this one poll. So they asked US voters whether Israel has the right amount of influence on US foreign policy. They also asked whether a war with Iran benefits the US or Israel more, or whether Trump's strikes on Iran have made them more or less likely to vote for a Republican in the upcoming midterm elections. The survey also tested the effectiveness of a hypothetical Democrat who defends the United States military relationship with Israel compared to another Democrat who prioritizes domestic concerns. And what's really interesting is the results of this poll here. So this is question number 1. Data for Progress first asked voters about the Israeli government's role in determining US foreign policy priorities. Now, I want to ask you all the same question. I'm going to ask you all the same question in here. Do you all, and of course this is not going to be statistically representative of the United States. We also have international viewers in here. Y'all are awesome. I want to see your response here in the comments. Do you think that Israel has too much sway on American politics? That Israeli preferences and policy has too much sway on American politics? Has the right amount or too little? I can launch it as a poll, but I figured I would just ask in the comments here. Maybe, because I get constricted with the amount of characters I can put in one of the polls. So question is, do you think that Israel has too much, the right amount, or too little influence in American political decision-making regarding foreign policy? So it's too much, the right amount, or too little. And I'll show you I'll show you what the poll finds. And this is supposed to be representative of the United States. Data for Progress is known as a very reliable pollster. So I'll tell you what the American public broadly thinks. Let's see. I'm seeing yes. I'm assuming yes means too much. 100% too much. Dependence on who's running the show, really. Too much sway. Way too much sway. Yes, Israel has way too much sway. Too much. It's not too much. They run the show 100%. Yeah. So let's see. The survey finds that a narrow plurality of voters overall, regardless of political affiliation, 43% feel that the Israeli government has too much influence over U.S. foreign policy, while 41% of the American public still think that it has the right amount of influence, and only 5% think it has too little influence. Now, this is driven by a majority of Democrats, 59% of whom believe the Israeli government has too much influence over the United States foreign policy, alongside 48% of independents. Now, in contrast, only 22% and 36% of Democrats and independents, respectively, feel that the Israeli government has the right amount of influence over U.S. foreign policy. So let me show you what the survey actually showed. If you're someone who is a visual person, this next part's going to be for you. During the live stream, the video, I will be reading out the results for people who are audio listeners, understanders, whatever. I just made that up. And I will also be showing you if you're one of these visual people that like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So a narrow plurality of voters believe that Israel has too much influence on U.S. foreign policy. What you are seeing here is the blue is too much, the yellow is the right amount, and the red is too little. And then this gray, it says don't know. So right now, amongst the whole populace, 43% of all likely voters believe that Israel has too much influence on U.S. foreign policy. 41% say it's the right amount. And I don't know how, I think it's probably 5% say too little. Now, what's interesting is when you break it down by partisanship, you generally see the trend that Democrats overall think that Israel has too much influence on U.S. foreign policy, and Republicans tend to think that it has the right amount. Which, what this really ends up showing is a lot of the talk of MAGA being anti-war, the talk of MAGA being anti-interventionist. It's really only a small portion of this MAGA base. They try to be so much bigger than they actually are. A good majority of Republicans just go along with what the cult says. That's what you're gonna find as the result of a lot of this. Now, some of them do have their own independent thoughts, but most all the time Republicans just go with what Trump does and what he wants to do, and that's why they're in a cult. But you will even see that there are some Republicans, around a fourth, say that Israel does have too much sway on foreign policy. So I will give credit where it's due. That fourth of Republican voters actually is seeing it for what it is. So credit to them. But you also see in here that a good chunk of Democrats still even think that Israel has the right amount, or there's some that even say too little. What's crazy is there's a bigger chunk that say too little amongst Democrats than Republicans, although it's not overwhelming in that sense. Now you're like, okay, wait, hold on. I see the words a narrow plurality. What does that mean? Is plurality the same as majority? No. So if you're one of these people that might be asking that question, it's a good question to ask. So there's a difference between plurality and majority. Majority means over 50%. Plurality means the most popular option of the choices. So when it says a narrow plurality of voters, what that means here is that it's the most popular choice of the options. You can't say that it's a majority of all likely voters believe that Israel has too much influence on foreign policy, because that would be incorrect. 43% is not a majority. Now, but this is the most popular option. So hence that then becomes that's called the plurality. So, does that all make sense? Let me get on to the next finding here. Next, voters were informed in this scenario that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said the U.S. had to launch the war against Iran now because Israel was going to attack Iran anyway, which would cause Iran to respond by attacking U.S. forces in the region. Then the respondents were asked whether launching a war in Iran benefits the United States or Israel more. Now, the poll found that a majority of voters, 56%, including majorities of Democrats, 67%, and independents, 56%, and even a plurality of Republicans, 47%, say that the war in Iran benefits Israel more than the United States. So credit where it's due here as well. So when you're looking at this, a majority of voters believe that the war in Iran benefits Israel more than it benefits the US. Now, what's interesting is the way that Data for Progress laid that out, they're making it seem, they're putting the assertion on the respondent that it benefits the US and benefits Israel, but they're asking who does it benefit more? There is a moment where you could say, well, what if the respondent doesn't feel like it benefits the United States at all? That's not something that can be understood from this specific question. Y'all following me? So this is only asking, does it benefit Israel or the US more? And you see that a majority of all voters, all likely voters, majority, I think it's, what does that say? 56% say that, yes, it benefits Israel more. And you see a little bit more amongst Democrats than Republicans. A good chunk of Republicans still think that this war is benefiting the United States more than Israel, which I find wild, but nevertheless, they do. And so this is really measuring where public opinion is. How many viewers have we gotten here today? 18? That's okay, it's Friday. I appreciate every single one of you. Please make sure to send some likes. Y'all are awesome. So what this actually shows is that when it comes to this war, a lot of Americans do think that it benefits Israel more than the United States. Now, just because it might benefit Israel more than the United States doesn't then mean they disagree with it. So again, the way that this question is formatted is not asking whether they think this is good or bad. It's just, do you think this? Now, let me proceed on to the next part here. Also, is my music too loud? I don't know if my music is too loud, but voters were then asked how the recent military strikes against Iran might affect their vote choice in the upcoming midterm elections. The survey finds that a plurality of voters overall say that they are less likely to vote for a Republican candidate in the midterm elections as a result of Trump ordering the strikes. Much of this, once again, driven by Democrats and independents, the former of whom, unsurprisingly, overwhelmingly report being less likely to vote Republican, 72%, along with a narrow majority of independents, 51%. So this is interesting here. Voters overall are less likely to vote Republican after Trump's military strikes. This is overall. Now, there are going to be some who, of course, disagree with that, but this is an overall look. I know the font is small. I'm sorry. I apologize. What you see is the green is much more likely. The light minty green is somewhat more likely. The gray would not affect my decision. The salmon color is somewhat less likely, and then the red is much less likely. Voters overall are less likely to vote Republican after Trump's military strikes. Amongst all likely voters here, you have a good chunk here. Though, this is the thing. What I want to point out is, yes, you're much less likely to vote Republican, but it's important to look at it how it's split here. If you want to talk about, is Trump losing support? Is Trump losing support over this war in that sense? Well, you do have a segment of his base, of the Republican Party that is like, yeah, I'm much less likely to vote for that. Now, much less likely doesn't then indicate that you will or will not. It's just a likelihood scenario. But this also kind of already shows the 10% or so never Trumpers that the Democrats are always so obsessed with trying to get. It's like, okay, they're already very likely a part of your caucus. But the biggest hindrance is really amongst independents. Independents are not gung-ho about these military strikes. I mean, you have 9% and 8% respectively that say, yeah, we're more likely to vote Republican, but a good chunk of them are saying that they are much less likely and somewhat less likely. I mean, over 50% are basically saying, yeah, we are absolutely less likely. And also amongst Democrats here, it's interesting because there are some people here that are registered Democrats that are like, yeah, I'm more likely to vote Republican over that. That's wild. That's wild. I'm like, who are you? Nevertheless, let me continue on. Next, Data for Progress ran a split test to see how different foreign policy stances might affect a hypothetical matchup between candidates of either party. Now, this is the most interesting part of the poll. And this is something that the DNC needs to take note of. So, hey, DNC, pay attention. Class is in session. So, in the first split, both the Democrat and the Republican place a strong emphasis on standing with Israel. You know, like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, we stand with Israel. It was so cringy. Anyway, including by means of military support for its operations in Gaza and Iran. When both candidates take similar stances on the issue, a plurality, not a majority, but a plurality of voters say they would support the Republican over the Democrat. Listen up, DNC, it's proven in the numbers. I'll show you in a minute. With another 20% either being undecided or saying they would sit out this election. Gee, kind of interesting. 2024 vibes at all? In particular, independents who choose a candidate show a slight preference for the Republican candidate, while nearly a quarter, along with 10% of Democrats, say they would not vote in an election between two such candidates, allowing for a narrow Republican victory. It has 2024 written in between the lines. Now, let me show you the responses. So, as I just said in here, next, imagine a hypothetical general election for the U.S. Congress occurring in your district between a Democrat and a Republican. Regarding the government's support of Israel, both the Democrat and the Republican candidates say that it is important for the United States to stand with Israel and support the actions Israel says it needs to defend itself. This includes prioritizing weapons and military support to assist Israel, including in Gaza and Iran. Now the question is, if the general election for U.S. Congress was held tomorrow in your district, and these were the candidates, who would you be more likely to vote for? The blue is the Democratic candidate. The red is the Republican. The yellow is, I would not vote in this election. And the gray is, I don't know. When you look at amongst all likely voters, the Democrat only gets 38%. The Republican gets 42%, a slight plurality. And then you have it split between the others. Again, when I say plurality, that doesn't mean majority. Plurality simply means that is the most popular option chosen amongst the options. That's what that means. It's not a majority because it's not over 50%. So what this would mean is that the Republican would win because they have the biggest vote share. And that's how our elections work. It's not about who gets the majority of the votes necessarily. It is about who has the biggest vote share. Because it's a winner-take-all system. So if you're like, wait a minute, but isn't it true that whoever gets the majority of the votes is usually the winner? Yes, but it's one of those rectangles and squares thing. Let's say you have an election that has 4 candidates in it. Candidate A gets 40%, candidate B gets 30%, candidate C gets 20%, candidate D gets 10%. Well, who wins in that scenario? Candidate A. They only got 40% of the vote, even though 60%, a majority, voted for someone other than candidate A. But that's how American elections work, is whoever has the highest vote share. What this usually does is it forces a two-party system. So I could talk about that for forever, but what you're seeing in here is amongst the Democrats, they don't really gain any Republican support. There are people, overall, voters are flocking to the Republican. Now, let me show you the next scenario. In the second split, this is where it gets really interesting. In the second split, the Republican once again prioritizes providing military support for Israel. But in this scenario, the Democrat now emphasizes funding domestic policy priorities. Quote, even if that means reducing support for the military actions of Israel. In this hypothetical scenario, the survey finds, the numbers show that they find that the Democrat beats their Republican opponent by more than 10 points, with significant shifts away from non-voting and towards voting Democratic and towards the Democratic candidate amongst both Democrats and independent voters. The survey even finds a small uptick in support for the Democrat among Republican voters when the candidates take this stance. So this is what it ends up showing. In this scenario, this is the prompt, and then it asks the question. So in this scenario, it says, the Democrat says it's more important for the United States to focus on issues at home first by using our tax dollars to bring down prices here, even if that means reducing support for the military actions of Israel. Now, the Republican in this scenario says it's important for the United States to stand with Israel and support the actions of Israel, says that it needs to defend itself. This includes prioritizing weapons and military support to assist in their operations in places like Gaza and Iran. Now, the question is, if the general election for the U.S. Congress were held tomorrow in your district, and these were the candidates, who would you be more likely to vote for? The survey finds 52% of people would vote for the Democratic candidate. Now, what the difference between that and this, it goes up by what, like 10%? 38 to then 52, 14% increase. So in 2024, if a Democratic candidate, not saying who, were to have emphasized their support more for funding U.S. policy domestic concerns, less about Israel, we would have seen a completely different shift. It's borne out by the numbers there. And also, it's not even just that one person that we all know we're talking about. It's also just in general. So what this actually shows is if the Democrats as a party focus more, if they want to win, then it's more advantageous for them to focus on domestic policy concerns, less about military intervention or funding abroad, because the American public largely is wanting to focus more about domestic concerns. And you could say, yeah, that's partially the reason why Donald Trump ended up winning in 2024. Correct. Even MAGA was like, we want to focus more, we are America first. In that sense, if you want to break it down purely by that idea, a good chunk of Americans are like, I can be on board with that. Now, that surface level. Only that surface level. When you actually dive into what MAGA and America First believes, no, a good chunk of Americans don't believe in that. But when it comes to focusing more on domestic priorities, a good chunk of Americans, a majority, think we need to do that versus focusing on foreign policy or outside of the US. So what this really shows is if the Democrat actually stands against and says, you know what, we need to focus more about domestic policy concerns rather than funding wars abroad, then you get a significant 14% rise. That is huge. So to my message to the DNC is if you want to beat Republican fascists, which is what I want, you want to beat MAGA, you need to stand up to Israel. Yep, you might really like that AIPAC money. You might like the money coming in from the shell organizations and groups that donate to those candidates. Sure, you might like the money, but you really want to win over the support of the American people and their trust? Don't take money from the big American Israeli lobby. Stop. It's not what people want. It's not what people want at all. So, DNC, Democrats, you want to win in elections come 2026? Stop taking AIPAC money. Stop taking money from the far right-wing government of Israel. Stop. Don't do it. Don't do it. You want to win? You want to beat Republicans as much as progressives do? Then stop taking money from the Israeli lobby. Your voters will reward you if you stand against it. That's another thing. Like the DNC, they try to be so like, we need to court Republican voters. Stop focusing on them. They're not waking up. They're not going to come to you. Focus on the disaffected people who turned away from the Democratic Party because you started going further right. Stop trying to focus on Republicans. Like, stop trying to focus on getting their approval. But you know the reason why the broader Democratic Party always tries to go towards the right, go towards the right, go towards the center. It's because they don't care about they would rather lose elections by going further right than win elections by actually staying progressive. Pure, raw facts. They would literally rather lose going further right than win going further left. I'm saying this as someone who used to work in Democratic primary campaigns. Like they'd rather lose by doing unpopular policy, trying to appeal to the right and get tremendous amounts of money. Because what that means is, then a Republican gets elected, and then people will be like, that Republican's a disaster, and then they're guaranteed to win the next time. And it's so frustrating. And Elisa makes a really good point here. All these people that are like, oh my God, you don't believe Israel has the right to defend itself? There's a difference. And you're like, oh my God, are you anti-Semitic? No. There's a difference between the far right-wing government of Israel doing horrific actions to people, Palestinians in Gaza, and also perpetuating this war in Iran. And there's a difference between the government, those actors doing that far right-wing policy, and the physical people. The same way that you can't claim that all Americans are exactly like Trump. There's a difference between a government's leaders, their actions, their horrific policies, and the citizenry in which they support. There's a difference between the Iranian theocratic religious terrorist regime and the Iranian people, many of which are fighting for their independence against their government. So the idea that all of a sudden if you criticize a government that you are somehow then discriminating against the people based on their identity, it's exhausting that the media doesn't actually correct that. It's annoying. It's annoying. If you call out and criticize a government of some country in Africa, their population is majority not white, it doesn't mean that you're somehow being racist in any sort of way. You're criticizing the actions of that government, especially if they are doing something horrific to their people. And it's such a cop-out way of trying to weasel your way around a disingenuous argument. And it's really annoying. And you get what I mean. But so what this shows is when the Democrat focuses on domestic policy concerns, even if that means reducing support for military actions of Israel, while the Republican stays staunchly supporting the actions of the government of Israel, what it shows is more people are more likely to vote for the Democratic candidate come in a general election. That's what this shows. Make sure to send some likes. I love all of you. That's what this shows. And even a small chunk of Republicans would actually vote for the Democratic candidate because of that, which I find fascinating. Now, it's not a huge chunk, but it is at least something. And then finally, the Data for Progress organization asked in this poll, likely Republican primary voters, specifically the same difference in foreign policy stances. Specifically how the same difference in foreign policy stances would affect their vote choice in a hypothetical primary election. Primary election just between Republican and Republican. The survey finds that Republican primary voters are relatively split between a candidate who prioritizes military funding for Israel and one who prioritizes funding domestic policy concerns, 48% and 45%. So when you are just asking Republican voters, would you rather have a candidate that focuses on Israel first or America first? It's half and half pretty much, with some very few people that are kind of in between. I found that to be really interesting. Because what it shows is there are a good chunk of Republicans that will disagree with Trump's actions, but then they stand by him no matter what. Even if he is doing stuff that they are against. So if they're against Trump's actions, they're still I generally support him. It's have some critical thinking here. He's doing something you disagree with. Say so. Anyway, but yeah. Overall, these findings indicate that more than 2 in 5 voters think that Israel has too much influence over U.S. foreign policy, and that voters would be less likely to support a Republican candidate in the midterm elections as a result of President Trump's strikes, bombings on Iran. After hearing a statement from Secretary Marco Rubio about U.S. motivations for launching strikes, bombings in Iran, a majority of voters say that the war benefits Israel more than the United States. Our split test finds a hypothetical Democratic candidate who supports the U.S. military relationship with Israel would lose a race to a hypothetical Republican candidate, while a Democratic candidate who prefers to focus on issues at home, even if that means reducing military support for Israel, would defeat the Republican candidate. That's fascinating to me. So DNC, listening? You want to beat Republicans as much as I do? Go further left. Go progressive. Don't ignore your base. Embrace the people who actually stood up and said, no, we're not going to vote for you because you're the lesser of two evils. If the DNC wants to win, then they need to go left. Truly, they do. Stop focusing on trying to get these Republican voters. You've already got them. These never-Trumpers, you focus so much on trying to reach out to Republicans while you literally shame and shove away possible Democratic voters. And this is partially why I got so fed up working in Democratic primary politics. I used to run congressional campaigns for different people, primary campaigns. And all these people were like, we need to appeal to Republicans. Stop focusing on them. They do not care. You need to mobilize and get the people who feel disrespected and neglected. It's by the Democratic Party in general. Stop focusing on getting MAGA's support. It's exhausting. And the DNC, the truth is they would rather do that than they would rather focus on trying to get Republican votes than Democrat votes because they are aligned closer with Republicans than they like to admit. Now, before I get on to the next poll here, you can see this is the survey methodology. For every Data for Progress poll that comes out, they talk about, this is a survey conducted amongst 1,251 US likely voters. They did it from this date to this date, March 6th to March 8th, and the margin of error associated is 3 points. So whenever you look at these polls, you say, well, it's likely that the true answer is between 3 points plus or minus 3 points of the findings. So that's what the margin of error is. Now, I am going to shift to talking about another thing with foreign policy, but I'm not going to cover this one for very long because we've already spent 40 minutes talking about that last poll. And I mean, what did you all think? And also, I want to know what you think about this here. All right, so this is another interesting Data for Progress poll that came out recently. Voters strongly oppose boots on the ground in Iran. Think the war is not worth it. Do you agree? Do you agree? It's so funny because I used to have a teacher in 6th grade. Her name was Miss Barrow or Miss Barrett. But she used to do this thing where she would do like a little shoulder thing and she would go, do you agree? So I just thought of that. But voters strongly oppose boots on the ground in Iran. Think the war is not worth it. Question, and I want you all to answer in here. Do you support, oppose, or not sure us, the United States, having boots on the ground in Iran? Do you support, oppose, or not sure? The war with Iran has entered its 3rd week, while President Trump has at times stated that the war will end very soon, on other occasions suggested it will last longer, and has privately expressed interest in placing U.S. boots on the ground. A new survey from Data for Progress finds that a strong majority of voters, 68%, would oppose the U.S. deploying military soldiers on the ground in Iran, while only about 1 in 4 voters, 26%, would support it. Democrats, 85%, Independents, 71%, are strongly unified in opposition, while Republicans are evenly split, with 48% in support and 48% opposed. And I find that to be really interesting here. So this here, you see the green is strongly support, and then somewhat support is that minty color. The gray is don't know. Then the red is the somewhat opposed, and then the really, really dark burnt umber kind of color is the strongly opposed. What you'll see is around 85% of Democrats are like, yeah, we oppose this. This is a bad idea. While it's pretty evenly split amongst Republicans. And a good majority of independents say that they generally oppose it. So in the chat here, I'm curious. Do you all support or oppose boots on the ground from the United States in Iran? Do you all support or oppose? I strongly oppose. I don't even think the United States needs to be involved in any of this. I really don't. I think it's stupid. I think it's really, really stupid. Now, I don't like what the Iranian government is doing to their people. I find it horrendous. Their own government is unaliving their citizens for protesting. But does that then mean that the United States somehow needs to make things worse by escalating and just unilaterally bombing them, even if they are not a threat to us. I think that makes it more dangerous for United States citizens. I think the fact that Donald Trump has actually bombed Iran first, per the request of Israel, has put our US citizens more in danger, because it's like walking into a room and then smacking someone else because you don't want them to smack you. It's like you're the one that walked into the room and smacked them. They're probably going to try to smack you back. I think that it makes it more dangerous. The fact that use that analogy. Just imagine walking into a room and seeing two people fighting, and then you go over and you're like, I'm going to walk into this room to smack that one guy so he doesn't smack me back. No, doing that is probably going to get them to respond. Fruitcake is mad today. I would prefer to call that passionate. And also, I find it hilarious because it sounds like you're a returning viewer with a crush. So, I'm glad that someone has a crush on me. I think it's funny when people call me fruitcake. Fruitcakes are delicious. At least I got flavor, honey. At least I got flavor. What are you, some stale bread that was burnt in the toaster? At least I got flavor. At least I'm sweet. And I love that in my cake. Eat me up. Anyway, so that was what that poll showed here. I want to get to Epstein here. So we've of course talked a lot about foreign policy. We've talked about those kinds of polls. Let me shift to another interesting poll from Data for Progress here, and let me take a sip of my coffee. Whew. Sometimes I just get on a tirade and I start talking a whole lot. My green screen is really not acting great today. All right, here we go. Good morning, beautiful people. I hope you all are thriving, not just surviving. So we've been talking a lot about foreign policy lately. Iran, all that crap. We're in a war. We're not in a war. It's both. We've won, and it's only beginning. Enough of that for now. Let's talk about Epstein, the real distraction for why we started this war in the first place. Possibly, maybe, probably, who knows. But this is the latest... I can't English today. This is one of the latest polls from Data for Progress regarding the United States citizenry's views on Epstein. So the poll found that voters want more Epstein accountability, but they really don't expect to see it. Which, that's really, really cynical and kind of sad that our voters themselves are like, yeah, we want this, but we don't think we're going to get it. A citizenry, if they want something, then that's what the citizenry should get from their elected leaders. Just the idea of government is service to the people, is representation for what the people want. The fact that the government is not responding at all to what their citizenry wants is really dark and messed up and completely goes against the whole idea of why government is there. So when I read this headline here from this poll, I'm like, voters want more of this, but they don't really expect to see it. That's so people want, the citizenry wants something, but they don't have enough faith in their government that their leaders are actually going to deliver it to them. That is cynical. It's right, but it's cynical. And it makes me so mad and makes me want to run for office so I can fix that, But new data for Progress polling finds that voters broadly want to see further accountability, but most doubt any Americans will actually face consequences. By an overwhelming margin, voters say the Justice Department and the FBI should be doing more to hold people named in the Epstein files accountable, including making arrests. Nearly 3 in 4 voters, 72%, take this view, compared to just 23% who say the federal government has done enough and should move on. This support crosses party lines, including 87% of Democrats, 73% of independents, and 57% of Republicans. And this is the poll here, so if you're one of these visual learners, this is the part for you. You see here, the blue is the Justice Department and FBI should be doing more to make the Epstein files more visible and include making arrests, holding people more accountable. The red is, oh, they've done enough and we should focus on other things. So you see 72%, almost 3/4 of Americans are like, yeah, we want to see more. We want to see more. And it's higher amongst Democrats than Republicans, which is not surprising in that instance, but I will give credit. A good chunk of Republicans are like, yeah, well, we want to see more. Our candidate promised us more. We want to see more. So I give them credit on that, sure. All right. A plurality of voters don't think Americans will be arrested for the Epstein ties that people might have. And this is just like, what this really shows is that Americans have become so they've become so pacified with not getting results from their elected leaders, which is just sad. Like, American citizens deserve better from their government. They're like, yeah, we want to see this, but we don't think we'll get it. Like, isn't that just messed up? It's just messed up, the fact that a majority of Americans want something and they're like, yeah, we don't have faith in our leaders that they're actually going to deliver that. That's not how government should be. That's not how this is supposed to work. If the government works for the people are not supposed to just sit back and be like, yep, I guess that's what we're getting from our government. No, that's not the purpose of it. It's just sad that we have gotten to this point where people are like, well, you know, they're just not really listening to what we have to say anymore. So I guess this is what we're getting. It's not right. It's not right. So a plurality of voters don't think that any Americans will be arrested for Epstein ties. You'll see that around 35% of all likely voters feel that this way. Or wait, hold on. Regardless of what you think should happen, do you think any Americans will be arrested for their ties to the Epstein files? And 35% say yes, but a good majority or a plurality say no. So you're like, wait, hold on. What's the difference between plurality and majority? I covered this earlier if you were watching the live stream, but this is posted as a video. A difference between plurality and majority. Majority means that you have over 50% of a group saying something. Plurality means that is the most popular option of the options. So there's no majority of what all likely voters want in this scenario. But the plurality is the most popular option of the three, which is the 45%, where they answered no. Regardless of what you think should happen, do you think any Americans will be arrested for the Epstein files? 45% of plurality say no, Americans that are in the Epstein files will not be arrested. So that's what the difference is there. Also, it's interesting because voters are holding the Trump administration more responsible for Epstein than the Biden administration, which I think is correct. I think it's correct because under the Biden administration, for those people who do not know, not everything was actually able to even be released because the Epstein files spans multiple different departments. It spans, of course, the executive branch, but then also the judicial branch. So when we're talking about the Epstein files, yes, under the Biden administration, they could have done way more to disclose those. So that's fair. Though the Epstein files also includes judicial proceedings and testimonies that have been sealed under different judges. Now, the Biden administration did ask for those things to be unsealed, but did not get the request granted. So you can criticize the Biden administration for not doing enough, though they did at least ask. So it's important to note that in regards to the Epstein files, people are like, well, why weren't they released under Biden? Well, because he tried, but it didn't really go far enough. Now you could say, well, he didn't try hard enough. It's a fair critique. I say that of the Trump administration. I'm like, they could have gone farther. So anyway, but that's just another interesting little wrinkle in all of that. All right, this is a very interesting poll here. And I want to talk about this really, really quickly. Let me fix my music. Hold on just a second. Let me fix my music and take a sip of coffee. All right. Are you all familiar with prediction markets? You know, those things that are like Polymarket, Kalshi, Predict It, that kind of stuff? Truly myself, I am not super familiar with those things. I know about them. I know that people can participate in that. I view it as a little bit like gambling in a sense. Of course, it's similar to the stock market where you can say, I think that this stock is going to go up or I think this stock is going to go down, and you can play it that way. It is a risk evaluation assessment thing. I view that as kind of like gambling in a sense, but for really, really smart, knowledgeable people. And I don't know enough about something to then be on that. Though, what's interesting is this also reminds me of trading stocks if you are a member of Congress. So, if you all are familiar, members of Congress, they are still allowed to trade stocks. They are still allowed to trade stocks. And you're like, well, okay, trading stocks, why would that matter if you are a member of Congress or not? Well, people who are in Congress are privy to information that the United States public at broad is not. In congressional testimonies, there are things that are disclosed in public predictions market about a pandemic before the American public knows about it. So, members of Congress are privy to information that they might receive first before it really shows in the market, which gets into the whole discussion of insider trading. When members of Congress can trade stocks based off of information regarding a certain market, if it's going to do really, really well or if it's going to plummet, and that makes it a very unfair advantage compared to people who are not elected politicians. So, when the public is surveyed about these prediction markets, voters oppose prediction markets on government actions and support banning politicians from participating, which I broadly think that that's a generally good thing. I think it's a good thing. So if you all are familiar, and I'm actually just curious in here, I'm going to ask, if this is posted in a video, I want to see in the comments, but in the live stream, are you all familiar with prediction markets? Prediction markets, Polymarket, Kalshi, Predict It. Are you all familiar, yes or no, with those prediction markets or the idea of it? Maybe you've seen an ad from a phone game about it. Maybe you're watching something on YouTube and you see an ad for those things. Are you all familiar with prediction markets? This is not something that I know a tremendous amount about, but it's basically where you can bet on certain things happening. It's similar to sports betting. Right now, the gambling industry is seeing a huge surge because now people are betting a lot more on, oh, this is going to go up, this is going to go down, this team's going to win, this team's going to win. So I see some people are familiar with it. They know about it. That's cool. I personally, when I run for Congress, I would want to ban these for people who are in positions of power. Be like, no, you cannot participate in that. You can't. Because if you're a member of our government, if you are a congressperson, you are privy to information in private hearings that isn't public to everyone else. So you might have insider knowledge about how a certain market will be affected by certain government actions that they might take. Members of Congress might end up doing a certain piece of legislation that heavily impacts a certain industry. And then what they can do is they can place their bets based on how that industry is going to perform or do, based on the information or based on the vote choice that they make. So members of Congress are the ones that write and pass the legislation. Let's say they write and pass a piece of legislation that completely deregulates the cryptocurrency market. Then they bet a lot on the stock market regarding cryptocurrency stocks, and then they make a whole bunch of money. So what it is doing is our lawmakers are privy to information that the public isn't knowledgeable of. in that sense because of their position. So they can use their position to artificially control how the market performs, and then they can make money based on that. I would make that illegal. That is taking advantage of your position for corruption. It's a story as age old as time. And with these new prediction markets, I would suggest, yes, we need to ban members of Congress or elected leaders from participating in this stuff, because our elected leaders can control government actions and how the economy works. So if you are simultaneously making the rules or manipulating how it's all going to be affected, then you shouldn't be able to capitalize or take advantage and reap the benefits of the decision that you just made. It's pure corruption. So when breaking down this poll here, prediction markets, platforms like Polymarket, Kalshi, I have no idea how to pronounce that, Predict It, that allow users to wager money on real-world events, have experienced rapid growth over the last several years, with billions of dollars now being wagered on platforms each week. These markets allow users to wager money on a range of political events, from who will win a Senate seat to whether the US will carry out a military strike. Recently, congressional leaders have proposed legislation to bar politicians from participating in these markets and to ban markets on topics like war, assassinations, and election outcomes. And I think that's generally a really good move because, we don't need to have a betting contest on who is going to win. We don't need to make it mainstream. If you want to do something amongst your friends, who am I to restrict that freedom? But it's different because if we have a betting market based on all of that, then what that can turn into is a way for certain people to then do these actions that then can benefit them financially in such a huge moment. We shouldn't, it's manipulation, it's insider trading. So new data for progress polling finds that voters are broadly skeptical of prediction markets on government actions. And there is wide bipartisan support for banning elected officials from using these platforms. For instance, let's say that you are a member of Congress and you place a whole bunch of bets on our country going to war with another country. Let's say that there's a question that the United States is about to wage war on Genovia, a fictional country from the Princess Diaries. Let's say that you're a member of Congress and you put in a whole bunch of bets about, is the United States going to go to war with Genovia or not? Yes or no? And I place a whole bunch of money on yes. Well, I, as a member of Congress, it is up to Congress, it is their job to declare whether we are in an official war or not. So it's basically me putting the thumb on the scale that benefits me. That's pure classic corruption. Imagine our president also doing that. Imagine if our president was betting on prediction markets, like, is the president going to launch strikes on Genovia? Yes or no? And you have prediction markets based on that. Well, if you are the president, and you have the power to unilaterally make that decision, you do not have the right, or at least you shouldn't, have the right to then make predictions on it. So it's like you're literally controlling the destiny of whether you receive money or you don't receive money. The purpose of government is to root out and have a system that's equal for all people. So the fact that these prediction markets coming in basically allow politicians to participate as integral cogs in a machine that they themselves can use to benefit. No, that's not how this is supposed to work. Anyway, so this new data for progress polling found a majority of voters, 59%, agree that wagers on potential government actions, ranging from what politicians will say in speeches to whether the U.S. will carry out a military strike, should not be permitted. This skepticism is consistent across party lines. 60% of Democrats, 61% of independents, and 57% of Republicans say these wagers should not be allowed. Older voters are much more skeptical of these markets than younger ones. Just 20% of voters aged 45 and older say these wagers should be allowed, compared to 44% of voters under 45. So women are also more skeptical. 22% of female voters support allowing these wagers compared to 35% of male voters. So most voters think that wagers on government action should not be allowed. And I'm glad to see that this is how it is breaking down here because, you know, it's just classic corruption. It's classic corruption. I'm getting really close to my hard cutoff, and I want to reveal one more poll here. One more poll here, and this is just going to be really, really quickly. All right, let's finish the live strong. I appreciate every single one of you. Please make sure to send some likes. I know we haven't had the highest attendance today, but I appreciate all of you being here. All right, so I'm going to cover this one other poll here. This is from Data for Progress, of course. All of them have been. But voters increasingly think that AI, artificial intelligence, will hurt the economy. What do you think? Put it in the comments below. Comment it in the live stream if you're watching this as a live or as a video. Please make sure to put that in the comments below. I personally think that AI is going to hurt the economy. But also, when it says, oh, is it going to help or hurt? It also depends on, is it going to hurt or help whom? Is it going to benefit the working class, the middle class? Or is it going to benefit or hurt the Epstein class, the wealthy elites, the billionaires? So when it says voters increasingly think AI will hurt the economy, I think it also depends on who the receiving person is in that exchange. There is little consensus about the impact of artificial intelligence on the American job market, with some analyses finding minimal impact and others predicting catastrophic job loss. A previous Data for Progress survey examined how voters' general perceptions of AI vary across demographic and partisan lines. In a new survey, Data for Progress asked voters specifically how they think AI will impact the economy, including its impact on the employment rate, voters' ability to keep their own jobs, and the wealth of everyday people. A plurality of voters, now you're like, okay, plurality, majority, what's plurality? I've mentioned this in the live stream already, but if you're watching this back as a video, a plurality and a majority are two different things. Majority means over 50% of a population. A plurality means the most popular choice of the choices of a certain group. So if you have 4 candidates, candidate A, B, C, and D, candidate A gets 40% of the vote, 30% of the vote, 20% of the vote, 10% of the vote. A plurality is the most popular choice amongst the choices. So that would be candidate A. That's 40%. Now, 40% is not a majority of 100%. So that is a plurality. So a plurality of voters, 46%, the most popular option of all of it, think that AI is likely to hurt the American economy, while only 28% think that it's likely to help. That's wild. Who is in that 28%? Also, it depends on how you ask the question, though. So I'm kind of conflicted. Because it's like, okay, it's likely going to help the economy, but whose economy? Working class person's economy, middle class person's economy, or elite Epstein class economy? This is a notable change from December of 2025, when voters were evenly split between thinking AI would hurt, 37%, or help, 36%, the economy. This shift is particularly pronounced amongst Democrats. The percentage of Democrats believing AI will hurt the economy has risen from 34% to 53% in the new survey. Voters who are female, 53%, and Democrats, 53%, at least 45 years old, 51%, and not college educated, 51%. Okay, that's too much. Let's just get to the graph. So what you're seeing here is that over time, over different months, you see that more people are holding the view that AI is likely to hurt the American economy. A majority of voters, 54%, think that AI is likely to increase the percentage of Americans who are unemployed, while only 11% think AI will improve employment rates. Who thinks that AI is going to improve employment rates? Who are those people? You think that a robot, oh yeah, having a robot come in and take my job is gonna increase the opportunity for my employment. What? Who are you? Who are you? A majority of voters think that AI is likely to increase unemployment rates. How in the world? Who are these people? Of course, AI likely to increase the percentage of Americans who are unemployed. You see that this is higher amongst Democrats than Republicans, but it's pretty broadly the same. But I don't understand amongst these populations, who thinks that AI is likely to decrease the percentage of Americans who are unemployed? Who are you? I don't get it. Next, survey respondents who are currently employed were asked whether they are concerned about their own jobs being reduced or fully displaced by AI or automation. This was their response. Amongst all likely voters, you saw that 15% are very concerned about their job personally going away because of AI. But then you also saw a lot of people say, oh, I'm not concerned about my job at all. About my job at all being displaced by AI. So that's interesting. That's interesting. And you saw that this was pretty uniform across a lot of different statistics. You saw that when it came to age, people who were over 50 were not concerned at all, while people under 45 tended to be a little bit more concerned. But I'm surprised that under 45 is not bigger than I was thinking it would be. So, and you can see that more Democrats are concerned with AI taking away jobs than Republicans, which I find interesting in that sense. When asked whether they agree or disagree that AI will increase the wealth of billionaires, a majority of voters, 65%, say they agree. However, a strong majority of voters, 57%, disagree that AI will increase the wealth of everyday people. So what this is also showing here is, okay, with the rise of AI, it's likely going to benefit wealthy elites, while everyday ordinary people are not going to see the benefits of AI. They're not going to see the wealth grow because of AI. That's because AI ownership is probably only concentrated amongst the top shareholders and elites of an AI company. So everyday people are not going to see the benefits of AI going to their specific pockets. So as AI continues to grow, it's very likely that it's only going to increase the wealth of the existing people who already have so much. So we're going to see even more wealth inequality because of that. So love that. Anyway, I have to get going. It is past my cutoff time. I love all of you so much. I need to get to work. Y'all are incredible. Someone said, which are liberal companies? Not necessarily. We have a lot of AI companies that are starting to be very, very right-wing. So if you are like, oh, all these AI companies are owned by woke liberals. Actually, if you look at the people who own a lot of media, people who own a lot of digital platforms, they tend to go right-wing. Elon Musk, one of them. Larry Ellison, another one. What's his name? You can see Bill Gates. Bill Gates is one of those, but he tends to lean more Democratic, so you could say that. Peter Thiel, another one that's very, very right-leaning. What is his name? Mark Zuckerberg, right-wing. So, yeah. Well, good try. Anyway, I appreciate every single one of you. I need to skedaddle. I love all of you so much, even if you don't like me. Please make sure to check out my latest content. I just posted a 10-minute video this morning. You all are awesome. Happy Friday to everyone. I am gonna skedaddle. Thank you all for watching this video. I appreciate you. Please make sure to send some likes. I work really, really hard to deliver this content, and y'all are incredible. I appreciate every single one of you. Just remember that you are beautiful, you are loved, you are valid, you are strong, and you are fierce. Don't let anyone or anything or any algorithm ever dim your shine. I love all of you so much. Bye!